Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. I just got back from picking up my Walmart pickup for the week and decided I'd sit down and do a belt review for you all on the new SBD 10mm belt that just came out last week. So let me start with this. I'll preface this. There are a few significant tweaks that have been made on this belt and the belt design as well as the buckle, and I'm going to work through each of those with you all. It is also important to note that this is my first belt that I've owned since 2016 when I got this belt. I've actually owned this belt for as long or longer than I've been an SBD sponsored athlete. So I actually paid for this belt out of my own pocket. It's one of the first runs of the SBD belt. So with that said, there might be some slightly emblem wise and nuances that have been changed for the 13mm belt as well, that when I'm making this comparison, it may not apply if you have a brand new belt from them. It is important to note, however, that this buckle is on the newer side. I got this buckle in February because I broke my old buckle. Basically, one of these bolts slipped out, and I will talk about bolt construction whenever I'm talking about the actual lever mechanism for the new 10mm belt, because they have fixed what broke on my old lever design. So now that you know a little bit of history between me and how long I've had this belt specifically and kind of my background, I do want you to know I've used many belts in the past. I'm trying to think. I know I used two of the lifting large belts early on in my career. I was for a short stint working with Strength Shop to use their belts, so I've gone through those, both prong and lever belts. I've used Titan belts in the past as well, all before I was sponsored by SBD, and then since then I've used this lever belt. And it is important to note that I just could never find a lever that fit me properly until I found this lever belt, and it was because of the smaller hole design. It allows for more intricate tightening and loosening of the belt, whereas traditional lever style belts, you have to use a screwdriver to move them and whatnot. And I felt like the lever itself was too long, so it went from really loose on you to really tight quickly. And I like the shorter lever length on the lever itself. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and look at this brand new 10mm belt. So if you're not familiar, whenever I say 10mm belt, I am talking about this width right here. It is 10 millimeters thick, in other words. All of the other dimensions are exactly the same. So the length of the belt, this is an extra large, the same as my 13mm belt. The width this way is exactly the same as well. The only thing that changes is the 10mm thickness. Now, with that change in thickness comes a couple of things. One is this belt is way more pliable. So you can see this is very flexible leather because it's effectively, 30% thinner than a 13mm belt. And I'll go ahead and show you on this belt here. You can see how stiff it is, and because of how thick it is and how many years I've used it, it is conformed to my body, right? You can see this is contoured to fit me exactly, and it's exactly, set to fit my body. Now there's pros and cons to this, because the break-in period for a belt like this is much longer. I remember when I first got it, I thought I had dislocated or broken a rib because this belt was so stiff. And it was just wanting to kind of pry into places that I didn't want it to be. But after like 6 weeks, and of course I didn't have a broken rib. I'm sure I had a bruised rib though. It was quite painful. After 6 weeks or so, it starts to conform to your body, as you can see here, and you get that perfect fit for your belt. Of course, this is going to happen the same way, with the 10 millimeter belt. As I use it, it will start to conform to me, but I'm not having that same discomfort or pain right off of the bat because it's one, it's thinner, so it's more pliable, and it just doesn't hurt to wear it overall. So, as a power lifter, what difference is this going to make? For me, the way of thinking is, if you're doing a heavy squat or something where you want the maximum support on your core, I would go with the 13 millimeter belt. I'm going to still use this for my heavy squats. And if you think about it, it's adding the most amount of thickness to the pillar that holds the weight. So as far as support goes, it's going to be far and away more supportive this way. Now, the 10 millimeter belt, on the other hand, could be great for benching. I like to wear my belt to bench, so because it's more pliable and it's a little thinner, that might give a little more room to arch in the bench press while still giving me something to breathe into. And then also, it was brought to my attention that it might be a good idea to use this for something like deadlifts. And I hadn't thought about it before this past week, but it makes sense to me because in my experience, my deadlift mechanics always get better as I lose weight, because as a bigger lifter, I have a bigger stomach. So whenever I'm getting down into position, my legs and my stomach can kind of get compressed against each other. And if I'm too heavy, I can't get in quite the right position. Well, when this belt is overlapped, right? See this right here. The difference between these two is going to be doubled because you have 2 layers of the belt, which means a 10 millimeter belt at its thickest is 6 millimeters thinner than the 13 millimeter belt at its thickest. So that is over half of a centimeter that can stay out of the way. And I still need to work with it, right? I deadlifted, I did my heavy session in this 10 millimeter belt last week, and I did my accessories in this as well. I also did some pause squats in the 10 millimeter belt. I'm really liking it. Now, do I have definitive evidence that there's a performance increase between the two? No, I do not. But I do know biomechanically it makes sense because it allows a little bit more clearance, almost like I lost that little bit of weight to get into a better position for my deadlift. Now, for a smaller person, right, if you're an 83 kilogram lifter, a 74 kilogram lifter, is this going to make a difference at all? No, right? And I sure hope no one is out there pretending that it's going to, because if you're in those smaller weight classes, just mechanically, you don't have enough mass to be getting in the way anyway. So kind of like how I mentioned in my wrist wraps review video, where the stiff wrist wraps weren't for me for my bench press technique because of a niche technique that I use. This 10 millimeter belt could be an edge for me because of a niche amount of mechanical advantage that it provides over this 13 millimeter belt. Now, the last couple of things that are a little more cosmetic, one here is functional. This 10 millimeter belt buckle design is rounded, which is really nice. So if you compare the two, the original buckle design is kind of sharp on its edge, and SBD had mentioned that they did this so that it wouldn't dig into, say, your legs. And I have this issue on pause squats or deadlifts where this buckle would bruise or cut the upper part of my thigh as it hits it. I certainly don't feel that as much with the rounded belt buckle, so I appreciate that. And I think it's a lower profile design, so the corners are a little more rounded on the new belt buckle compared to the old, which that is definitely welcomed. I would be curious if this buckle is compatible with the 13 millimeter design, because I would certainly like to have that on my main competition belt. And then the other big piece, this is huge for me. They cut these bolts a little bit shorter so that they don't seem to pop out, and they are more depressed into the buckle itself. And I had issues. It's a habit of mine to keep pushing this bolt in, because sometimes it will just inch itself out just a tiny bit, and they seem to have fixed that on this new design. So that is awesome, and that just kind of goes to show they've listened to us as athletes on how to improve. There's also a couple little things. So the belt says SBD Powerlifting, whereas my old belt says SBD Apparel. Not a huge deal, but pretty cool. And then also on the newer belt, it says made in, I think it says Sheffield. Yep, Sheffield, England, which is where SBD originated. I don't know if you all are going to be able to see that, but it's right in there. Made in Sheffield. Nice touches. As always, the leather is great quality, and it's really soft and a nice sharp red. So overall, this belt is amazing. I still hold fast that the SBD belts are the best on the market. Even with the higher price points, these are the ones to go to because they will last you. This belt is a testament to that. I've been using it for over 7 years at this point, and I feel like I could definitely get 7 more years out of this thing if I wanted to. The main last question that I have is space. Do I want to have to switch between 2 belts for a competition for my different lifts? I don't know. Packing 2 belts for competition is kind of a pain, and I'm running out of space in my gym bag. But for training, I'm definitely going to switch back and forth. Heavy day belt, light day belt, and I will continue to play around with my competition deadlifts on this 10 millimeter belt style. So that'll do it for my review on the new SBD 10 millimeter belt. Super excited to get my hands on this and try it out. SBD always makes the highest quality equipment, and I appreciate them as always for sending it my way. So that'll do it. Please comment down below if you have any questions on the new belt design, anything that I can help you. I will certainly answer those comments. And as always, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And until next time, happy lifting.